They told everyone I gave up, that I had thrown away my chance, that I was too broken to matter anymore. It wasn't failure. It was something deeper, something no one could see. Not then. My name is Sarah Thompson. I'm 29, living in a tiny apartment in Seattle, and this is how I went from being overlooked to being the only person the clients ever asked for. I remember the silence, the meetings where no one spoke to me, the whispers in the kitchen, the promotions that passed by as if I weren't even there. But life has a way of reminding you who you are when no one is looking. And when the moment came, when the world finally noticed, it felt like a quiet explosion. Not because I demanded it, but because the truth refused to stay buried any longer. My whole life, I was supposed to be the one who made it. The one who became a doctor, a lawyer, or some glossy version of success that would make the family proud. I can still hear my father's voice, deep, authoritative, saying, "Sarah, you have too much potential to waste. We're counting on you." But then came the cracks. The long nights staring at a laptop that refused to make sense. The morning panic attacks before work. The weight of trying to fit into a suit that felt too tight for a heart that only wanted to breathe. It wasn't laziness. It wasn't disinterest. It was burnout, a slow, burning collapse that no one saw until it was too late. My mom stopped mentioning my job to friends. "She's just taking a break," she would say with a tight smile. My sister stopped asking how I was doing. At family dinners, when the conversation came my way, it was quickly diverted. "We don't talk about that anymore." I felt like a ghost at my own table, an afterthought, an embarrassment. Then one morning, I made a quiet decision. I would start over. Not in a blaze of glory. Not with applause. Not with a big move announced to the world. Just quietly. Slowly. In a tiny room with a borrowed laptop and a heart beating harder than ever. No one noticed. Not my friends. Not my family. Not the people I used to call mentors. But that was okay. Because this time, the chapter belonged to me and me alone. It started small. So small it felt insignificant. An online post for a volunteer project, teaching senior citizens how to use their phones and laptops. Not exactly the corner office I'd been groomed for. Not the sleek job title I was supposed to have. But in that tiny room of the Seattle Community Center, surrounded by folding chairs and old laptops, I felt a faint warmth I hadn't felt in years. The first person I met was Eleanor, a retired teacher with hands that shook every time she tried to tap a touchscreen. "This machine hates me," she grumbled one morning. I smiled, pulled up a chair, and said softly, "No, it doesn't. Let's try this together." We started slowly, sending a simple email, attaching a photo. The moment she heard the swoosh of that message leaving her screen, her eyes welled with tears. "That was for my son," she whispered. "He lives in New York. I haven't spoken to him in years." Then came a message the following week. A photo, a reply, an invitation. And suddenly, in that tiny room with the hum of old laptops and a faint smell of stale coffee, something clicked, not just for Eleanor, but for me. It didn't make the news. It didn't trend on social media. No one gave a speech about it. But it changed a life. It changed 2 lives. Slowly, quietly, I started doing more. Helping refugees fill out online job applications. Helping a retired veteran set up video calls with his grandchildren. Helping an immigrant couple launch their tiny bakery online. Each moment felt insignificant on its own, like a grain of sand. Yet together, they shaped a shore. It was humbling, healing, human. I didn't make headlines. But every night, as I shut down the laptop and stepped into the quiet Seattle mist, I felt it. A warmth in the chest. A whisper in the heart. A reminder that making a difference doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it arrives in silence and reshapes the world when no one is looking. Over the months, what started as a humble initiative grew into something I had never dared to imagine. The tiny sessions with Eleanor and a handful of others became a program. We called it ConnectBridge, a digital literacy initiative for seniors and underserved communities across Seattle. We were onboarding 1,200 seniors every month. Our online newsletter had a 78% open rate, higher than some Fortune 500 campaigns. We weren't making millions, but we were making connections. Real connections. We partnered with the Seattle Public Library, then a local bank, that wanted to sponsor digital literacy programs. We hired volunteers, trained trainers, and watched as quiet victories compounded. I remember seeing a retired veteran send a video message to his grandson for the first time. The smile on that man's face lit the room. These weren't metrics anymore. These were moments. Human moments. And yet, when I came home for Thanksgiving, it was as if none of it existed. My uncle waved a hand as I tried to explain it. Teaching old folks to click buttons? Noble work, I guess, he shrugged, reaching for the wine. My sister smiled thinly. Sarah has always been the free spirit, she said, brushing hair out of her eyes as if that summed up my life. My mother changed the subject quickly. Pass the potatoes, dear. I felt invisible in that dining room. Not because I hadn't achieved something, but because what I'd built didn't fit the mold. It didn't have a title that would impress at cocktail parties. It didn't scream success to the people I loved. And in those moments, I wondered if any of it really mattered. But the program grew despite their silence. We started working with a national nonprofit. Our annual report spoke for itself. 12,000 seniors trained in digital literacy. 78% open rate across email campaigns. Over 90% of surveyed participants felt more confident online. To the world beyond that dining room, it meant something. To the people we served, it meant everything. But every time I walked into a family gathering, I felt like a ghost. The quiet sister. The one who doesn't have a real job. The one waved away with a smile and a tilt of the head. Sarah's always been the free spirit. I'd hear, and I'd smile back, swallowing the sting. Not because it wasn't true, but because it ignored the rest of the story. What they didn't understand was that I was living a life built by countless moments. Not moments announced with applause. Not moments framed and hung on the wall. But moments exchanged across screens and old cafe tables. Moments shared with people who had felt forgotten too. They overlooked me, but it didn't matter. Not then. Not anymore. What I was doing didn't need their recognition. Its worth came from every grateful smile, every tentative voice saying, "Thank you. You've changed my world." And that was enough. At least for a while. Until one afternoon when everything changed. When a complete stranger spoke a truth I had stopped hoping for. The moment when the world would walk into the room and, quietly, intentionally, ask for me. It happened on a gray Seattle morning when I was setting up for a digital literacy workshop at a community center. The room was quiet except for the hum of old laptops and a faint tap of raindrops at the windows. I was checking cables when a man walked in, tall, sharply dressed, carrying a sleek laptop case. He smiled as he waved to one of the volunteers and then came to introduce himself. "Are you with ConnectBridge?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes. I'm Sarah Thompson. I run the program." He smiled wider. "Sarah Thompson? I've been looking for you." My heart skipped. Not for any reason I could understand then, but because of the sincerity in that voice. He introduced himself as Marcus Jennings, an executive at a multinational tech company. They were searching for new ways to expand digital literacy globally. He started telling a story about an elderly woman he met at a conference. A retired teacher named Eleanor. My breath caught. She said this initiative gave her the confidence to send an email to her son in New York. An email that changed their relationship. An email she had been too scared to send for years. He shook his head slowly. That's when I knew we needed to find the person behind this work. I felt my knees almost give out. Not because of the scale of the moment, but because this was about Eleanor. Someone I had worked with in those quiet moments when no one was looking. He kept going. We started looking into ConnectBridge. We learned about the metrics, the stories, the impact. But no one gave us a name. Until now. He extended a hand. "Sarah, this initiative changed lives. Including the life of someone very dear to me. My own father." He smiled, brushing away a faint mist in his eyes. I've been trying to understand how to tell him about video calling. He's stubborn, but thanks to one of your volunteers, he learned. He called me last week. The smile on that screen, it felt like a miracle. I stood there, shaking. Not because I felt proud, but because this was a moment I had stopped hoping for. Not applause. Not accolades. Just understanding. Then came the line that felt like a hammer breaking the silence I had lived in for years. Sarah, he said quietly, you built this for people like my father. For people like Eleanor. We want to scale it. We want to fund it. And we want the person who started it, the person no one noticed for too long, to lead this initiative globally. Will you? For a moment, the room was soundless except for the soft hum of the heater. My voice refused to work. In that silence, memories surged. The nights with my laptop in a tiny room. The skeptical glance from across the dining table. The sting of knowing I didn't fit into the picture my family drew for me. The moments when I wondered if any of it would ever matter. Then, quietly, I smiled and said, yes. Around us, volunteers started to notice. Someone smiled. Someone gasped. But I didn't need applause. Not anymore. Not because I had stopped hoping for it, but because I had stopped living for it. I stepped out into the mist that morning, a quiet smile playing on my lips. Not because the world had finally noticed, but because the truth had refused to stay buried. Not because I demanded attention, but because it walked in on its own and refused to stay quiet. That morning felt like belonging. Not belonging for a title or a name announced across a room. Belonging because the work spoke for itself and someone somewhere was listening. Belonging because every quiet moment, every grain of sand, had reshaped the shore. The weeks that followed felt like a quiet exhale. Not a victory lap. Not a moment of, I told you so. Just a slow, serene shift in the air. My phone would buzz with texts from volunteers, from people I had taught, from families I had never met. They weren't saying, congratulations. They were saying, thank you. Then came a letter. A plain, cream-colored envelope addressed to me. The handwriting was unmistakable, my mom's. Inside was a short note. Sarah, we don't say it enough, but we're proud of you. Not because of titles or appearances, but because you refused to give up when no one was watching. Love. Mom. I didn't post it online. I didn't frame it. I didn't call to boast about it. I just kept it. Folded it. Tucked it into a book I read every morning. Not for its weight, but for its warmth. Then came a quiet moment with my sister over lunch. No pretense. No masks. Just a shy smile and words that felt like balm. Sarah, I didn't understand before, but I see it now.
What you've built, it means something.
It means you chose to matter when no one noticed. And that's worth more than anything. I smiled. Not because I needed the affirmation, but because it felt like belonging. Belonging that came from understanding, not from obligation. I had stopped looking for their applause long ago. What I had found instead was a quieter, deeper reward.
Peace.
Not the kind that arrives with a headline or a round of applause. The kind that arrives in moments of stillness, when you can rest a hand over your heart and feel its steady beat. I didn't print the letter. I didn't make a speech. I just kept doing the work, helping one person, then 10, then 10,000. Not because I had something to prove, but because I had something to give. It wasn't pride anymore. It was peace. And somehow, after all the silence, that felt like the truest victory of all. If you've ever felt unseen, overlooked, misunderstood, this story is for you. If you've ever started over when no one noticed or worked long nights with no applause, I want you to remember this. You don't need a spotlight for your light to matter. You don't need a microphone for your voice to make a difference. Some of the best stories are born in silence. Some of the biggest victories arrive quietly, like a whisper that reshapes a room. And if that's where you are right now, if you're building in the dark, planting seeds in a field no one can see, keep going. Stay true. Stay hopeful. The world may not notice right now, but one day, the right person will walk in. The right moment will arrive. The right voice will call your name. Until then, stand tall. Stay soft. Stay open. Stay ready for the quiet miracle that's looking for you. Where are you watching from? What chapter are you living? Let me know, because someone needs to hear it. Thank you for sharing this space with me. Stay hopeful. Stay real. Stay you. More stories like this are on the way.